Hello to our friends and family out there in the financial advisory group world. We welcome you to another one of our monthly videos. And if you notice this time, it looks a little bit different. We're trying something new this time and we're going to see how it goes. So on the screen with me today, you have Ben Burkhart from our office. You can say hi, Ben.
Hi everyone.
So Ben, myself, and Jake and the others in the office have sort of talked about, is there a way we could switch these videos up a little bit? And we came up with an idea of a show. We're going to try to call it Rapid Fire. So the idea is we'll just come up with topics we're hearing about from you, our clients, in meetings, via emails, or just communications that we continually hear about, and have Ben or I or someone else in the office just talk through sort of what we're seeing or hearing today. So before we jump into our first ever rapid fire video, it's exciting because we started this video series probably about 3.5 years ago. We're probably on video number 30 plus. So we're excited to try something new. But before we jump in, I'll have Ben give a quick introduction of himself for those of you who aren't familiar with Ben here in our office.
All right. I've been in the industry a few years. I have my CFP, but I started with the financial advisory group about 1.5 years ago now. I think February of last year. It's been good. I've been actually the guy behind editing all of Damien's videos, so I figured I should show my face for this upcoming series, and hopefully you guys like it. And yeah, it'll just be us answering some questions that are hopefully on the top of mind for all of our clients. And if you have any topics that you're thinking of, you can also feel free to send them our way, and we'll try and loop them into the next video.
And Ben and I welcome any feedback. Ben's not used to the negative feedback you get on emails for these videos, but hey, anything good, bad, and different. If you like the format, if you don't, excellent. So as we roll right into our first topic, in meetings today, one of the things we'll continue to hear about is some of these signs that the economy seems to be struggling a little bit. Whether it's the unemployment rate is starting to tick back up again. That good old word that Ben and I have probably heard nonstop, this inflation word over and over again, that groceries cost more these days, whether it's bread, milk, it doesn't matter, things cost more. Also, things even like the SOM rule, which has become more public. So, just Ben, curious, right? I'm hearing negative stuff. Should I be concerned?
Yeah, and it's one of those tough things because there's always negativity around us. And with something like a recession, it's not just a negative term, it's something that usually impacts everyone's lives pretty significantly. So everyone's concerned about when is the next recession. And I'm here to tell you there is a next recession. There always will be a next recession. It's more so when, if, more or so when, not if. But what we look at from our side of the table is really kind of how the economy is doing. We try to not get emotional about it. There are some certain indicators that will say, hey, we're in a recession. There are also indicators that said 2 years ago that we're in a recession. One of the headlines, I think we can probably throw it up on the screen. I think it was, 2 years ago that
Yeah,
said,
October of 2022.
yeah. So the famous headline, and there were many of them, but it said something like 100% of economists forecast a recession in the next 12 months. Well, we're like 24 months out and the economy's booming.
And just a
We,
side note on that, Ben, I think the market's up about 50% from that posting of October of. So predictions were a little off.
yeah. So just like now, I mean, there could be a recession, but we just try and or a recession looming. We don't think we're in a recession, but we're just trying to look at what we have in front of us, which is economic facts. So things, if you've heard of the SOM rule, that's realistically, it's just a big move in the unemployment rate. And Damien mentioned the unemployment rate before. We'll throw up a chart of where it is, but the unemployment rate, even though it was a big jump up, yeah, it triggered the SOM rule that says we're in a recession. But realistically, we're at such a low point in our unemployment that even just a little move up is going to uh, kind of create a false sign. So historically, we're still very low. I think it's around 4.3%. So we've been hovering even below four for over 12 months, which I think was like a record span for how low unemployment rate is. So Regardless, unemployment rate being at 4.3% is historically very low. The other thing with the economy is kind of where inflation is. And inflation's always on top of people's minds. It kind of goes lockstep with the Federal Reserve. When the Federal Reserve sees that the inflation's cooling, usually they'll lower interest rates. So some things that we're looking at sort of on the inflation side of things are, and good things that we'll bring up when people say, hey, the inflation's out of control. Yes, I mean, historically, we did have a big run up in inflation, but things have actually calmed down. We've seen some cooling, which the Federal Reserve also likes to see. So
And I think
something,
that's important right now is that to acknowledge we've had inflation, but also understand that the worst of it's behind us. And I think that's what the Fed, if you heard them last month, Jackson Hole, and they'll meet, we're filming this in early September. They're meeting again this month, and more than likely they're going to lower rates because they're basically saying inflation's a thing of the past. Yes, prices aren't going back down. We understand that. But you do see things like the price of gas down to a low that we've seen basically for the last 3 years. You see mortgage rates coming down, which is excellent. For anyone going to buy a home, mortgage rates are down, I think, around to 6.3, 6.4%. So
yeah, and
again, to it,
gas
yep,
prices are around like below 3.5. So even though you could say, gas 10 years ago was $3 and now it's 3.4, relatively speaking, gas is down from what was it, almost $5
yep.
a year and a half ago. So things are good. Inflation has cooled, and especially in certain pockets, mortgage rates, gas prices, some food's a little sticky and some housing, but realistically, across the board, inflation has it's now under control, which the Fed likes to see, and hopefully that brings some lower interest rates. Um,
And I think Ben hit it on the head before that we're not saying things are perfect, right? I think if you push both of us, the economy's not in the booming shape it was a year ago, but that's okay. Right? It's as we've said before, good is okay. We don't need this economy to be great. And I think things are good. Don't overcomplicate it. For today, most people are working, they have a job, and you're probably sick of me or Ben saying this in meetings. If you're working and you have a job, what do? We spend money, and we're still doing it. We'll transition to the last topic or our next topic, but it blew my mind that we had record travel from June through August and also had record travel over Labor Day weekend. So we're still spending money, right?
mhm.
And
I've gone
that's the
out to
most,
eat a few times,
yep,
and there's always you still need a reservation.
yep.
So if people are still spending money on those discretionary items like going out to eat, booking flights, even if a wait's a little longer at the airport, think of that as a good thing. That means people are traveling, people are spending money. So that's what we like to see on this side of the table for a good economy.
And if you're right to transition to our next topic that I think will become more talked about over the next 2 months is, I guess, two words, volatility. And if you didn't know it, I think there's an election coming up, and I think they're still having it this year. So we're having an election in a couple months.
I
But
think.
I think from the volatility side, volatility tends to happen when you have change. We just talked about the Federal Reserve coming in, right, Ben? So one of the things, weather, right? When weather changes, you tend to get some pretty volatile weather when patterns come in and change. And I think that's what we'd expect now. So as Ben and I have talked in meetings, we all want a market that just goes up. That's just not normal, right? And I think we try to remind that we're not going to try to predict when it's going to go up or when it's going to go down. We just want to be prepared. We do believe in the markets. We believe long term, but also understand from time to time, as I've said many times, the market's going to punch us in the face. It doesn't feel good, but it happens from time to time. And Ben, I don't know if you want to go over some of the seasonality stuff with this market, that there's some signs
Yeah,
that we maybe do a
definitely.
little bunch of bad weather coming up.
Yeah, hopefully not too much bad weather. But the first chart that I'll throw on the screen just talks about what we see in a typical election year. And we've been telling clients, volatility's coming, and there really hasn't been much volatility compared to historically. There's been, a day or two. Actually, as we're recording this, I think yesterday was the first 2% move in I don't know how many weeks, but there is some more volatility that's happening. But just looking historically, Volatility just keeps creeping up. So when I say volatility, that's kind of the change in per like average day, the change in prices. So the more the prices change, the higher the volatility gets. Leading up to a election into November, you'll see creeping higher and higher on this chart, just volatility. When someone's elected, no matter who it is, we'll see lower volatility, at least looking historically. But something just kind of talking about investment returns, June, July, and August historically are the highest 3 months in terms of returns for an election year.
And I
And
think our
that's
June, July, and August were pretty good, I think.
they were. I think they're somewhere between 10 and 12% just in growth of the S&P 500 just over those past 3 months. I guess from our perspective, be thankful for that because usually when we get towards September is usually not that kind to us.
Yep.
And we'll throw up another chart that shows you kind of September in terms of every single election cycle, or not even election cycle. This is just September in general. It's not kind to us. Just a lot of companies are figuring out their year-end budgets and making cuts, and portfolio managers are making trades just to kind of true up their capital gains at the end of the year. So based on a lot of weird things that happen, September just doesn't happen to be a good month. So enjoy the past 3 months, but election volatility coupled with just the September seasonality, just expect not to, have another 9% run over the next 3 months. That's
And
kind of
I think Ben had said a word we talked, it's expectations, right? It's just understand and expect that you're probably, most any of you that have been with us for a long time are sick of or laugh at my analogies of, it's that balloon that gets filled up, that the market's a balloon, right? And the more full it gets, we don't want it to pop. So if you picture that full balloon, if a balloon's full and you decide to let air out after it fills up a lot, that air comes out very quickly. That's volatility. So this balloon has had a great 3 months. If you actually stretch it back longer, it's been an amazing 10-month run. It's only natural and actually healthy to let some air out because we don't want it to pop. And I think the last thing we'll lend into when it comes to this volatility slash politics, and I think said this in a video a month ago, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, don't get political when it comes to investing. We've probably charted you, we've sent charts and charts galore, but the one we'll put up on the screen, you can just tell, right? Mixing politics and investing does not work. No one's going to tell you that, right? And our belief is own Microsoft, own Nvidia, own Amazon. And as Ben and I and Jake and here in the office will talk, the CEO of Microsoft doesn't care who wins the election. They just want to make money and make good products. And it's pretty mind-blowing that if you would have went ahead and taken, $1,000 invested in the market only when a Republican was president over the last 70 years, that $1,000 would turn into $27,000. If you did it only when a Democrat was in office, that $1,000 would turn into $61,800. If you just invested in 1970 and let it sit, didn't care about who was in the White House or not, your $1,000, Ben, and this blows my mind, would have grown to almost $1.7 million. Well, Ben, I'd rather take 1.7 million than 30 or 60, right? So
Yep.
let's
And
not
that's
get too
also
cute.
just that's time in the market too.
Yep.
Even like politics aside, pick any sort of event where you want to cherry pick random events that I don't want to be invested during XYZ or inflation's out of control. Let me pull my money out. History says just keep that money invested, and there's always going to be bad news. But all the people that weather the bad news and just stay disciplined, those are the ones that grow $1,000 to 1.7. So keep your money invested.
And our hope to end on that note is that's what our job is, right? To hopefully guide you the right way. That we talked about volatility, right? Guide you through that storm. Understand volatility is just part of the game. And that's part of why for clients that are taking withdrawals, we set buckets aside, right? We have funds set aside that if it's needed, we don't need to get too worried. And the last chart will show up, or image really, in a perfect world, we want the market to just go to that straight up line, right? It's just not reality. Reality is a much more volatile, bumpy ride. And hopefully what we can do is, walk you through that and get you end up in a better place. Like Ben said, we want you at 1.7 years from now, not 60,000. So I think that wraps it up, and we'll see if it was a success or not. We'll see if again, we love feedback. Be honest, we'd love to hear what you think about this series, sort of switching it up a little bit. We'll have other guests that come on as well. Again, welcome to our first ever filming of Rapid Fire with the Financial Advisor Group. Ben, thank you for spending the time with us today. And as we always say, thank you so much for the trust and confidence you continue to place in us year after year. The referrals we've had this year from our clients is it's the biggest thank you we can get, and it's been great. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Enjoy the rest of, I guess it's technically still summer, but the weather has been perfect. And as we noted, if the weather's good, just enjoy it. Don't worry about what's coming later. So we're checking out. Here's to our first edition of Rapid Fire, and we'll talk to everyone soon.